Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. The sky above Glassivon 9 was dark and white, filled with snow clouds and icy wind. The planet was a frozen mining world, cold, silent, and deadly. Storms could tear apart machines, and the temperature could freeze skin in seconds. Reed, a human, foreman, lived alone at Outpost Delta 7. His job was to manage drilling machines that pulled rare fuel crystals from deep under the ice. He had done this for years. Alone, without visitors, without much reason to smile. He liked the quiet. But tonight, the silence was broken. "Ool!" A sharp, thin cry echoed through the storm. Reed froze. He was standing in his supply room, fixing a cracked heater panel when he heard it. The cry wasn't human, it wasn't mechanical. It sounded scared. He grabbed his heavy coat, face mask, and thermal gloves. Without thinking, he stepped out into the storm. The cold slapped him like a wall. The wind howled. Snow whipped across his face. But he heard it again, closer this time. "Ah, whoa, like a baby." But not quite. Reed followed the sound down the slope behind the outpost. His boots crunched over fresh snow. Visibility was low, but his flashlight cut through the white fog. Then, he saw it. A small mound of snow shaking. He rushed forward. Two tiny bodies lay curled together, alien pups, each no larger than a house cat. Their fur was glowing faint, blue. Their bodies were shivering. One was barely moving, the other let out a weak cry. They looked like wolf cubs, but not from Earth, and they were freezing to death. Reed didn't think. He took off his coat, wrapped it around both of them, and held them close to his chest. Their little bodies were cold as stone. "Don't die," he whispered. "Not tonight." He turned back, walking quickly through the storm, shielding the pups with his own body. The snow got thicker. The wind screamed louder. But he didn't stop. He kicked open the cabin door and rushed inside. The warmth hit him like a wave. He dropped to his knees near the heater and unwrapped the coat. He grabbed 2 clean towels, wrapped the pups, and placed them beside the heat panel. They were still shaking. Reed boiled water. He found a medicine injector. He gently rubbed their tiny paws. One of them opened its eyes, bright silver, almost, glowing. It looked at him, and instead of fear, it licked his hand. "Easy, little one," Reed said softly. "You're safe now." He grabbed a small crate and lined it with soft cloth. He placed both pups inside, then sat beside them with a blanket over his legs, watching. He had lived on this planet for 10 years and never seen anything like them. They were not local. They were not wild. Someone had left them or lost them. Later that night, Reed checked the external cameras. No ships in the sky, no life forms near the outpost. Nothing on satellite logs. Then he noticed something strange. One of the pups had a collar, a small metal ring around its neck with alien markings. Reed zoomed in. The symbol was royal, ancient, and definitely not from any known species in this sector. He leaned back, heart pounding. "Where did you come from?" he whispered. The next morning, the smaller pup woke up weak, but alive. It nuzzled into the blanket. The bigger one had already started walking clumsily, sniffing everything in the room. Reed placed a bowl of warm water in front of them. The big one sniffed it, looked at Reed, then dipped its head and drank. The little one followed. Reed watched them, feeling something strange in his chest. For years, this cabin had been cold and quiet. Now it felt alive. He stood up and walked to the door, looking out into the endless snow. He had no idea what kind of trouble was coming. But deep inside, he knew one thing. These pups weren't just animals. They were important. And whatever brought them here wasn't done yet. The storm had passed, but the cold stayed like a shadow. Inside the cabin, Reed sat at his desk, staring at the collar he had taken from the older pup. It was small, silver, and cold to the touch. Symbols were carved deep into the metal, flowing curves and stars within circles. He didn't recognize the language, but one thing was clear. This was not from a poor family. It was royal, high status, ancient. And that made him nervous. The pups, who he had now named Frost and Echo, were fast asleep beside the heater. Frost, the older one, had recovered quickly. He was walking around the cabin, curious and playful, chewing on wires and boots. Echo, the smaller one, was still weak. Her breathing had improved, but she barely moved. Reed wrapped her in soft cloth and kept her close to the warmth. He checked her fur again. Strange lines had started glowing faintly, blue patterns that appeared and disappeared like gentle waves. Not natural, not random. She was changing, or remembering something. Reed opened his old satellite scanner and pulled up the logs from the past 48 hours. Nothing. No incoming ships, no emergency beacons, no distress calls. "How did you get here?" he muttered. He ran a deeper scan, then paused. There it was. A micro-energy spike detected 12 hours before the storm. Too small to be a ship. Too strange to be a standard drop pod. Almost like a teleport signature. His eyes narrowed. Someone didn't land them here. Someone sent them here. That made it worse. Whoever had these pups before had technology beyond what humans used out here. And if they went through the trouble to send them, through a storm to a remote outpost, it meant they were hiding them with him. Later, Reed was feeding Frost a bowl of soft protein paste when the pup suddenly stopped eating and barked softly, twice. Then he looked straight at Echo. She didn't move, but her fur glowed bright for a second, and then her eyes opened, silver, shining. Echo blinked once, then again. Then, slowly, she tried to stand. Reed rushed over. "Easy, you don't have to." But Echo pushed up with shaky legs. She took one step, then another, then sat down again, breathing hard but proud. Reed smiled. "That's it. You're a fighter." Echo tilted her head and made a sound, soft, almost like a word, not a growl, not a whimper. Something. More. Reed took out his translator tool and waved it near Echo. The device blinked but showed no clear result. "Too young for speech patterns," Reed muttered. "Or maybe your species doesn't use spoken language." Frost barked again, excited. He ran in a circle, then sat next to Echo, nudging her gently. Brother and sister. One strong, one still healing, but both special. That night, Reed sat beside the fire, watching them sleep. His hand rested on the strange collar. He didn't like where his thoughts were going. Royal markings. No record in the system. Strange powers. Teleport signature. No distress call. It all pointed to one conclusion. They were running, or being hidden, from something very big. He tapped into the central mining database and sent out a quiet request. "Has any unknown alien contact or creature rescue occurred near Glasshaven 9 in the last 7 days? The system took a moment, then answered, "Access restricted, classified." Reed blinked. That meant military-level silence. Someone didn't want anyone to know these pups were even here. He leaned back, heart beating faster. "What did I just bring into my home?" he whispered. Suddenly the lights flickered, just for a second. Then a high-pitched pulse echoed from the heater core. Frost sat up. Echo's eyes opened again, and this time her fur lit up in soft white light. She stood, walked across the room without falling, and sat beside Reed. She looked up at him, then placed her tiny paw on his hand. His eyes widened, because in that moment, something entered his mind. Not words, not pictures, just a feeling. "Safe," Reed whispered. "You can feel things, can't you?" Echo didn't respond, but her paw stayed on his hand. He looked at Frost, who was already watching with serious eyes. These pups weren't just alive. They were aware, and maybe They were waiting for something or someone. Reed looked out the window, toward the stars above the frozen sky. He didn't know it yet, but above that very sky, a fleet was already on its way, and they were looking for what he was now protecting. The next morning, everything was too quiet. No wind, no storm, no movement. Just still, frozen silence. Reed stepped outside his outpost wearing his heavy coat and goggles. The snow crunched under his boots as he made his daily check of the generator, line and antenna tower. The sun was low and dim on this icy world, but something in the air felt wrong, the kind of wrong that makes your skin itch. Even under 4 layers of clothing, then he saw it. Not far from the door, maybe 10 meters away in the snow, were tracks. Big ones. Not animal, not human, not any mining droid either. These prints were wide, deep, and shaped like clawed feet. Each step was far apart, like the creature was tall, heavy. It had walked around the cabin, not toward it, not away from it, around it, watching. Reed crouched and touched the snow. The tracks were recent, maybe 2 or 3 hours old. He looked back at the door. The pups had been inside the whole time, whatever this was. It didn't attack. It was looking. He rushed back inside and locked the door. Frost barked once when he entered, alert. Echo sat near the heater, her glowing eyes fixed on the door, as if she had felt something too. Reed knelt beside her. "Did you know something was out there?" She didn't answer, but her ears twitched and she pressed her tiny paw against the floor again. Reed didn't need translation. Yes. He checked the camera logs. Nothing. The motion sensor outside had picked up one faint reading, just a blur. Heat signature lasted under 5 seconds. Whatever it was, it moved fast. Too fast. Reed leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "Someone's here." He turned to the pups. "You were sent to me, weren't you?" "Not by accident." Echo blinked slowly. Frost growled quietly. That night, Reed couldn't sleep. He sat by the window with his old rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the ice outside. The world was quiet, but the wrong kind of quiet. Echo slept near his chair. Frost didn't sleep at all. He stood guard at the door like a soldier. Hours passed. Then, a flash. Bright light blinked in the distance, across the icy field. Like a beacon, or a signal. Then it was gone. Reed stood slowly. His radio buzzed, then fizzed into silence. Signal jammed. He grabbed his old scanning drone from the closet, powered it up, and sent it out into the air. It flew high, scanning the area with thermal sensors. When the feed returned, Reed's eyes went wide. There was a figure on the far ridge, tall, armored, not human. It wasn't moving, just watching. Reed whispered, "What the hell are you?" He zoomed in the feed. The being wore white armor blended into the snow, but its helmet had a single red eye glowing in the center. Not a hunter, a guardian, or maybe a scout. The kind sent ahead before a fleet arrives. He returned to the pups. Frost stood beside Echo now, both alert. Echo looked up at Reed. Then she spoke, not with words, but with a sound that triggered Reed's old translator device. One word blinked on the screen. Protector. Reed froze. You called me that?" Echo tilted her head. Another word. Appeared. Chosen. His chest tightened. He looked down at her and whispered, "You didn't just land here, did you? Someone sent you. Because they knew I'd protect you." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Reed walked to his weapons locker. He opened it, pulled out his blaster rifle, power cells, and thermal grenades. Then he looked outside again. The scout was gone. But the prints in the snow were getting closer. They weren't attacking yet. But soon, someone would. And Reed had made his choice. He wasn't giving the pups up. Not now. Not ever. He looked down at them, eyes sharp and voice strong. "If they want you back, they'll have to go through me." Frost barked once in agreement. Echo leaned into his side. Together, they waited for what was coming. The morning sky was not blue. It was black. Not because of a storm, but because of shadows, giant shadows that moved across the sky like mountains floating in space. Reed stood outside the outpost, his helmet visor raised just enough to see. They had arrived, 2,000 alien ships, hovering silently above Glassivon 9. Covering the sun, blocking the sky. Some were shaped like daggers, others like wings. Some were so large they looked like floating cities. They made no sound. No warning, just presence. A warning in silence. Reed's communicator crackled. Then a voice, deep, cold, and translated perfectly. "This is Commander Yishal of the High Blood Sovereign Fleet. We detect 2 living heirs hidden in your outpost. Return them unharmed, or face full planetary cleansing." Reed swallowed hard. He looked down at the 2 pups beside him, Frost and Echo. Frost stood tall, growling at the sky. Echo sat still, her eyes glowing bright. She wasn't afraid. She was listening. Inside the outpost, Reed activated the emergency console. It flashed red. Global signal jammed, no outside contact. He was alone, completely alone, except for the 2 lives now depending on him. He opened a direct response channel to the fleet. "This is Foreman Reed Wells. I found these pups half dead in a storm. I didn't steal them. I saved them." There was silence. Then the voice returned. "They are not pups. They are royalty, the last blood of the High Blood Empress. You are unworthy to speak for them. Return them. Now." Reed narrowed his eyes. "No." The silence this time was longer. He continued. "If they wanted to leave, they would have. They stay because they trust me." He looked down at Echo. She looked up at him and nodded once. The screen blinked. "You will regret this." That night the sky turned red. Drop pods fell like stars raining from orbit. Hundreds of alien warriors landed across the tundra. Black armor, red visors, energy rifles, but not a single one touched the outpost. Not yet. They were waiting. For something. Reed prepared. He reinforced the cabin's walls, set up old defense turrets from a buried supply unit, and hid Echo and Frost in the back storage bunker with an emergency tunnel escape. He wasn't just protecting them now. He was defending something sacred. At midnight, the wind stopped. A soft hum filled the air. And from above, a ship unlike the others descended, smooth silver shaped like a flower unfolding in the sky. It landed gently, just 30 meters away from the outpost. Reed stepped outside, his rifle across his back, and then she stepped out, tall, elegant, glowing, the High Blood Empress. Her eyes were gold. Her skin shimmered like pearl. She wore robes that moved like water, and her voice was both soft and sharp. "You are the one who found them?" she asked. Reed nodded. "I kept them alive." "You kept them hidden," she replied. "No," he said. "I gave them warmth, I gave them peace." The Empress looked at him curious. "You knew who they were?" Reed shook his head. "I knew they were cold. That was enough." She walked forward and the guards tensed, but she raised her hand. "Let him speak." She stopped just in front of Reed. "I felt their signal. I felt their bond with you. It should not be possible." Reed looked her in the eyes. "Maybe they needed something your world couldn't give them." She blinked slowly. "What is that?" He answered without hesitation. "Kindness." From behind him, Echo stepped out. Not afraid. Not hiding. She walked past Reed and stood before the Empress. Frost followed. The Empress dropped to one knee. She reached for them, but stopped short. The pups looked at her, then at Reed, then back at her. They stepped forward and touched her hand, but didn't stay there. They turned and ran back to Reed's side. Echo pressed her head against his leg. The message was clear. The Empress stood slowly, her voice almost a whisper. They chose you. Reed nodded. I didn't ask them to. I just treated them like people. The Empress looked at him with something strange in her face. Respect. She turned to her guards. No attack. No force. No claim. She looked back at Reed. You may not be one of us, but you have done what few in this galaxy would ever do. Reed raised an eyebrow. What's that? She answered. You gave the galaxy's most important lives a reason to trust humans. As the alien fleet remained in the sky, no shots were fired. No soldiers advanced. Instead, a message was sent to every high-blood ship. The heirs have bonded. The protector has been chosen. Leave Glassavon 9 in peace. And just like that, the ships began to turn. Frost barked. Echo lifted her eyes to the stars. The sky was clear again, and Reed had become something more than a foreman. He had become a guardian. Reed never planned to become a symbol. He was just a foreman. A quiet man in a forgotten outpost on a frozen world. He drilled for energy, fixed machines, and lived alone. But now the galaxy knew his name. Even after the Empress had called off her soldiers, the high-blood fleet didn't leave. They stayed in the sky like a storm that refused to move, waiting, watching, testing him. Inside the outpost, Reed checked the scanner. The ships weren't powering weapons, but hundreds of smaller crafts had moved into low orbit, circling the planet slowly. It wasn't war. It was pressure. A way of saying, we can crush you anytime we want. Echo and Frost slept peacefully in their corner of the room. Reed had built them a soft bed using insulation foam and old blankets. Echo no longer glowed with fear, only light. Frost stayed close to her, always alert. They trusted him completely now, and that trust was the problem. A new message came through the private channel. This time, it wasn't from the Empress. It was from the Council of Commanders, the military side of the High-Blood Empire. This human bond is unnatural. It threatens royal succession. The pups must be returned for proper genetic protection and security evaluation. Reed leaned closer to the screen. If you do not release them within 24 hours, you will be considered a hostile entity. He narrowed his eyes. No respect, no emotion, just orders. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. He looked down at the two pups, then stood and walked to the old wall cabinet. He opened it slowly. Inside were the last things he had kept from Earth: a folded flag, a worn photo of his old crew, and his military ID from before he became a minor, Staff Sergeant Reed Wells, Human Defense Force. He wasn't just a foreman, he was trained, and he knew what it meant to stand alone. He powered up the perimeter turrets, rechecked the hidden tunnel system, and reinforced the main door with an emergency blast shield. Frost followed him, tail high, ears forward. You're ready too, huh? Reed asked. Frost barked once. Echo walked to the console. She placed her tiny paw on the panel, and without warning, the screen changed. A new interface appeared. Alien symbols, glowing maps. She had unlocked something. Is that your tech? Reed asked in disbelief. You can connect to systems? Echo nodded slowly. Then a new message appeared on screen. Their minds grow fast. Their link to the hive is strong, but their bond to you is stronger. It was a private communication. From the Empress herself, she said nothing else, no commands, no orders. She was watching, just like the fleet, waiting to see what the human would do. That night, a stealth pod broke the edge of the atmosphere and landed 2 kilometers from the outpost. 4 high-blood commanders stepped out, heavily armed. They didn't ask, they didn't warn. They walked straight toward Reed's land. The scanners beeped, the drones activated. The turrets locked on targets, but Reed stood outside his door with one thing in his hand. Not a gun, not a weapon, a flare. He lit it, a red signal shot into the air, flashing bright against the dark sky. It wasn't a call for help. It was a line in the sand. The 4 commanders stopped. Reed's voice echoed through the frozen valley, carried by loudspeakers. You cross that line, you become enemies. I saved those kids. I didn't steal them. I protected them when no one else would. You think I'm just one man? You're right. But that's enough. The Empress watched the broadcast from her royal ship. Her advisors urged her to act. He threatens our rule. He corrupts royal blood. He must surrender. But she raised her hand. Wait. Back on the surface, the commanders stepped forward. Just one step. The turrets beeped louder. Reed's finger hovered over the manual defense trigger. Then, suddenly, Echo stepped outside. She walked between Reed and the approaching commanders. Her body glowed bright white, blinding, and behind her, Frost howled. The sound traveled for miles, high, powerful, ancient. The ground shook. The commanders stopped. In that moment, every ship in orbit felt it. A pulse. From Echo and Frost, from the bond, from him. They didn't just see Reed as a protector anymore. They saw him as something far more dangerous. A chosen one. The Empress stood, her decision made. She sent her final message. Let no one harm them. Let no one question the bond. The human stays, the heirs stay. The fleet leaves. And just like that, 2,000 ships began to turn. Reed lowered the flare. Echo sat beside him. Frost pressed his head into Reed's leg, and across the stars stories began to spread. Of the human who defied a fleet. The sky split open like silk. From above, a single ship began to lower. Not a warship, not a scout, but a royal barge, its silver wings folding like petals as it descended onto the frozen plains of Glacivan 9 Dario. Fleet had pulled back, but now she was coming down herself. The Empress. Inside the outpost, Reed was finishing a cup of hot tea when he felt it. The air had changed. The pressure, the quiet. Even the ground hummed beneath his boots. He stepped outside without armor, without weapons, not because he wasn't ready, but because this was different. This wasn't war. This was judgment. The ship landed softly in the snow, steam hissing around, its base. The door opened, and there she was, tall, silent, glowing like the stars. The Empress of the High Blood, ruler of worlds, mother of the heirs, and the most powerful living being in the Empire. Her robes flowed like water. Her crown glimmered with thousands of stardust fragments. Her eyes were gold, filled with eons of memory. But right now, they only saw him. Reed stood tall, no bow, no fear, just calm. And behind him, Echo and Frost stepped out, one on each side. The Empress stopped a few meters away. For a long time, no one spoke. Then she asked softly, "You didn't run." Reed shook his head. "They didn't want me to." Her voice was cold. "Do you understand what they are?" "I understand who they are," Reed said. "That's enough." The Empress slowly walked forward. Her eyes studied his face, his posture, his hands. "You are not a royal. Not bonded by blood, not chosen by ceremony, yet they trust you, like kin." Reed looked down at Echo and Frost. "They trust kindness," he said, "because they've seen what happens when they don't have it." The Empress's face didn't move, but something changed in her eyes, a memory, a flicker of sorrow. "They were supposed to be safe," she whispered. "Hidden, protected by my own court. But someone betrayed us. They were sent here as a last hope." She looked at him. "And you found them?" Reed nodded. "I didn't know who they were. I just knew they were freezing, alone, and alive." The Empress stepped closer. The guards behind her tensed, but she raised a hand. It wasn't a warning. It was permission. She knelt. The Empress of the High Blood knelt, at eye level with the two pups. Frost stepped back, but Echo walked forward. Her little paw reached out and touched her mother's hand. A spark lit between them, gold and blue. The Empress breathed in sharply. She remembers me. Then tears rose in her eyes, real ones. She pulled Echo close, not like a ruler, but like a mother. Frost joined them, placing his head against her shoulder. For a moment, the galaxy faded away. There was only reunion. Then, the Empress stood slowly. She looked at Reed. They are mine by blood. But their hearts chose you. She stepped forward, now standing. Just inches away, you could have sold them, traded them, lied about them, but you didn't. Reed shrugged. Didn't feel right. The Empress tilted her head. So simple, yet so rare. She removed a thin glowing ring from her hand, a royal command seal. She held it out to him. Take this. With it, you are protected, respected, watched forever. Reed hesitated, then slowly took it. It glowed softly in his hand, not cold, not heavy, just warm, like trust. The Empress turned to her guards. Leave this world. Tell the Council. The heirs are safe. No more threats. No more war. A pause. And no more watching him. As her ship began to rise once again, Echo and Frost looked between her and Reed. Then, they made their choice. They ran back to Reed's side. The Empress smiled, not as a ruler, but as a mother who understood. From the sky, her voice echoed one last time. Their future is still mine to shape, but their hearts are yours. And then she was gone. The sky was quiet again. Reed looked down at the glowing seal in his hand, then at the two small lives beside him, a human, two alien heirs, and a bond stronger than any bloodline. Time passed on Glacivan 9. The storm still came. The ice still cracked. The stars still turned above a cold and quiet world. But everything had changed. Because now, the outpost was no longer silent. It had a heartbeat. Reed walked through the snow with two small shadows running beside him, Echo and Frost. Once half frozen and nearly gone, now they were growing stronger, faster, smarter by the day. They chased each other in the snow, their glowing fur lighting the white world with soft blue. And everywhere they went, they returned to him. He wasn't just their rescuer anymore. He was more than a protector, more than a friend. They called him something else now, without words, without sound, but with every touch, every nuzzle, every look. Father. One morning, Reed sat near the heater, writing a report to send off-world. His job as a foreman was officially over. A message had come from Earth 2 weeks ago. You've been reassigned permanently, with honor. But Reed hadn't asked for that. He hadn't asked for any of this. Still, he accepted it. Because he knew his new life was here. Frost sat beside him, tail wagging as he watched the report screen. Echo walked across the table and placed something next to Reed's cup, her old collar. But it was no longer a symbol of control. She had carved into it a symbol, a circle, a flame, the same one Reed had drawn weeks ago by the fire, their symbol, their home. That night, a high-blood diplomat ship landed quietly on the ridge. No guards, no soldiers. Only one figure stepped out, an elder, dressed in light blue. Hurries, he walked carefully to the outpost, bowing his head. Reed met him at the gate. No trouble today? Reed asked calmly. The elder smiled. None. We bring thanks. And something more. He opened a small case. Inside, a silver crystal badge. Not royal, not military, but something sacred. You are now registered as a guardian of the royal line. The children have declared their choice, by bond and by heart. You are family. Reed didn't know what to say. He looked at Echo. She nodded, then gently pressed her head into his chest. No ceremony, no speech, just love. Over the next few weeks, ships arrived one by one, not for war, but to learn. Alien nobles, scientists, emissaries, They didn't speak loudly or touch anything without permission. They came to see how two royal heirs had chosen a human, and they left with stories that echoed across the stars. He did not command them. He did not kneel before them. He simply cared. Reed built new rooms into the outpost, not for guests, but for his growing family. He crafted play tunnels through the snowbanks, reading stations using old Earth tablets, and a sleeping nest warmed by core vents. At night, Echo curled against his arm, eyes glowing softly as she dreamed. Frost stood guard at the door like a soldier. And Reed? He watched, the stars not to escape, but to remember how far they had come. One evening, as the three sat outside watching the aurora dance above, Echo climbed onto Reed's lap. She looked up at him, her silver eyes full of meaning. Then, using the translator device, she finally spoke, just one word, but it shook him more than any fleet ever could. Dad. Reed didn't cry, not right away, but he held her tighter and whispered, "I'm proud of you." Frost howled quietly, and the frozen valley echoed back with warmth. The galaxy never forgot the story of the two lost heirs and the human who gave them life again. They called him many things: the protector, the flame-bearer, the defier of fleets. But, to two small glowing hearts on a frozen world, he would always be one thing, Dad.